Welcome and thank you so much for attending our webinar. Happy International Women's Day. My name is Sharnae Robinson Williams, and I'm the Director of Community and Content for ImpactPHL. ImpactPHL is a nonprofit advocacy organization that simply encourages individuals to align their values with their capital. We truly believe this would transform the greater Philadelphia region. And we do this by, hosting events like our upcoming summit, the Total Impact Summit, taking place in Philadelphia, May 16th and 17th. Registration is now open, shameless plug. We also do it through our monthly programming, such as this, and connecting individuals throughout the ecosystem to investable opportunities in the greater Philadelphia region. Our event today is co-hosted by our friends over at Impact for Breakfast. Impact for Breakfast is an informal networking organization that convenes family offices, foundations, philanthropists, investors, all with a passion for social enterprise, entrepreneurship, and impact investing. If you're interested in becoming a member of Impact for Breakfast, please reach out to our board member, Mr. Dermot Murphy. I will drop his information in the chat. As well as if you're interested in attending our summit in May, registration open. Feel free to contact me, or if you want to learn a little bit more about what it is that ImpactPHL does, I will add my contact information as well. So today we are here to celebrate International Women's Day with a very timely topic, how, where, and why to invest in women-owned businesses. This is something that is truly important because right now across the United States, we have women-owned businesses that are making a huge impact on our planet and in our economy. But traditionally, they've been underfunded. A Columbia Business School research report found in 2019 that while female-led ventures are equally likely to successfully IPO, they are less likely to receive venture capital funding. This fact was proven by the Harvard research report that came out in 2020 that said that women-led startups received only 2.3% of venture funding, but were more profitable. I repeat, more profitable than their male counterparts. Our panelists today will discuss their collective experiences as women-owned and women entrepreneurs, but also they will talk about the importance of investing in women-owned businesses. Without further ado, I would like to pass the baton to our fantastic moderator of the afternoon, author of the XX Edge, Dr. Ruth Shaber.
Thank you, Sharni. And what a great way to spend International Women's Day. I'm so pleased to be able to be here and to encourage a robust conversation with our three panelists today. And so many familiar faces in the audience. It's really great to see all of you. And as Sharni said, we're going to do some polls first, and they should be coming up on your screen. Please select the option that best describes you. Everybody see it okay? Okay, while we're finishing up the poll, as Sharni mentioned, I am very proud to have recently co-authored a book called The XX Edge, Unlocking Higher Returns and Lower Risk. And my co-author, Patience Marienball, and I are very, very excited to be presenting the the evidence that women-owned businesses way outperform. And it's not just that they outperform male, it's really all about gender diversity, that the gender diverse teams outperform male-only teams. And as Sharni also mentioned, we know that women's businesses are vastly underfunded, so they tend to outperform even with less capital. Some of the data points that we are all hearing more and more about: gender inclusive teams are 21% more likely to see outperformance and profitability relative to their peers. Female CFOs deliver a 6% increase in profits and an 8% stock performance bump compared to overall performance under male predecessors. New companies with a female founder perform 63% better than those with all male teams over an observed 10-year period. Women-run hedge funds outperform the average of larger hedge funds by a margin of 6% over a 6.5-year period. And an IFC study in Vietnam showed that banks reported lower non-performing loans among women entrepreneurs. One bank reporting a difference of 0.9% for women-owned SMEs compared to 2.17% for men-owned SMEs. And we know that loan repayment numbers hold up across mortgage owners and small business owners in the United States. And they tend to be more reliable debtors. Women tend to be more reliable debtors, even in the face of higher interest rates and much lower access to capital. So why would women, in fact, be such excellent financial decision makers and such high performing business owners? Well, we know that women tend to be closer to the problems that need to be solved, whether it's because women tend to be the consumers of many of the products and services that businesses are providing, or because they're closer to the problems that need to be solved in the world, like climate change or access to food and safety, gender-based violence, healthcare, all the things that new companies are trying to innovate around. Women tend to have a better perspective or a different perspective on risk, without qualifying it as better, that women tend to see more of the long view and are less likely to compromise on short-term gains, and instead looking for the long-term gains. And women tend to have a more collaborative leadership style, all of which, when added to a gender diverse team, are going to make for a much more inclusive and higher performing. So the topic of this panel today is, how can you invest in women-owned businesses in addition to the why? And I think that there are tools out there across all investment opportunities, whether it's in public equity. There are now screens where you can look for the number of women on boards or in the senior leadership teams. There are also some great tools out there that help you assess companies for how well they support women across many different metrics. In private equity, you can screen for gender diverse funders. You can look for who else you're co-investing with. Are the funds actually being supported by female GPs? When you're in the position to provide debt, you can look for women borrowers, and you can consider providing them a lower interest rate if you think that if they need that in order to support their business. And even as consumers, we all make investments of sorts as consumers in the products and services we choose. And, on Google right now, you can actually screen for women-owned businesses near me. So whether you're looking for a dog groomer or any other type of retail or whatever the services are that you're looking for, you can screen for women-owned businesses. So with that overview, I'm very excited to turn to our panelists to get this conversation going. And I hope we've already had some questions that have been submitted previously, but if questions come up for you, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time going over folks' bios, even though they're very much worthy of discussion. And if you do want to get more information about any of the panelists, please go to the website, the ImpactPHL website. So first of all, let's talk about, given all this performance data, which is coming out more and more and so consistent across all asset classes and all types of businesses, how are we going to break this change, this cycle of the fact that women-owned businesses tend to get decreased funding, tend to have to be successful on a much less margins, and how are we going to collectively promote gender diversity in these companies? We know that there's a bit of a catch-22 in gender finance, that higher thresholds of due diligence, that there's implicit bias, and that there seems to be a higher standard for track record and a mentorship among female business owners. Let's going to start with Judy. Based on your experiences as the founder and chair at Diversified Search, how are you seeing the C-suite change over the past 40 years? Have you seen a change in women executives and entrepreneurs and how they're being supported by their communities?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with all of you women today on this special day that finally we get recognized, and now even worldwide. Praise the Lord. I've been at this for a long time in the executive search industry, some 40 plus years. And when I started out, women were teachers, nurses, or secretaries. And, the amount of time that it's taken to, get where we are today is, if you told me that, I never would have believed it way back then. It's unbelievable. But, having said that, I would say in the past 5 to 10 years, we have seen enormous progress for women. It just took, a lot of things coming together to really make it happen. And right now, there's never been, greater momentum or greater pressure or greater scrutiny and the need for transparency in terms of, seeing the movement of women. And the thing that's really exciting about it is women are really qualified now. And for a while, there was a lot of, just because we're women, you need to give us a shot at it. Well, now, guess what? We've got the credentials, we've got the track record, we've been accomplished and have delivered results. And so it's all there. And so I think women themselves have gotten a lot better too. They're not afraid to speak up. And, especially these millennials, I love them. I wish they'd been around when I was coming. I mean, they tell it like it is. It's an employee-driven economy now. Companies and organizations and employees are speaking up, especially, women in diversity and the guys are scared. They're listening. They know they better. And so, it's a great time, to be a woman in the C-suite. And a lot of the barriers have come down. And I think it's just having the confidence, to believe in yourself and do it. And historically, I felt like women were far too reticent. They just didn't have the confidence, and with good reason. But there's no excuse now because, we support each other. We're there for each other. There are countless examples of that. And, so I think it's the best it's ever been and only going to get better.
Thanks so much. Interesting observations. Shaitali, I'm going to turn it to you. You're the Chief Impact Officer at 100 Women in Finance. What can you tell us about what you've learned about financing both women-owned businesses, but also creating and funding women investors? And that's a really important part of the supply chain of capital. Can you share with us a little bit about the Impact Initiative at your organization and how you anticipate the program will increase women in the financial industry?
Absolutely, but today is Women's Day, and 100 Women in Finance, we're literally 100 women in finance. And it is such an honor and privilege to have 2 of those 100 women in finance. I'm looking at them. So we have our board chair, former board chair, Mimi Drake here. We have our former vice chair, Mindy Posa, which is so incredible. And of course, Emily, thank you so much for inviting me to join this amazing platform. This is just fantastic day. So I cannot not mention that out of 100 women, I have 2 right here with me. But that, I mean, to Judy's point, that says a lot about progress we made because seeds were planted by Mindy and Mimi and people like that in our industry. And so my little background, I started my career 20 years ago as a credit analyst at JP Morgan Chase. And when I started as a credit analyst, I mean, I was only literally one woman, little 5 feet brown woman, wherever I went. And I thought that's how it was always going to be. And that's how it was always, so we've come a long way, obviously. And in that early career, I do change making now because folks like Mindy and Mimi's created this incredibly dream job for me to do. But in those days, in underwriting and doing credit analysis, our bosses, even though we were junior underwriters and we were junior credit analysis, our bosses never could understand that certain female-owned businesses had value. And so some of the things that I talk about now in my new role, creating more female investors, is to create those bosses who understand when you're looking at these credit files and when you're looking at these incredible entrepreneurship ventures, to see value in it. Many men never encounter those products and services in their entire life cycle, right? So they don't see value in it. So we need to send women at very, very, very top levels of finance, so then they can allocate certain amount of capital, then that gets distributed in the food chain. So my job at 100 Women in Finance is to creating that pipeline of future investors. So we work with girls all the way from early childhood, elementary school, all the way to college graduates. We have a number of different programs, partnerships all over the world. And our 20,000 members, professional women in the industry, support all of that work. So we have gone about, our strategy has been to go way deep in the pipeline and build investors that we want to see 20 years from now. So I'm taking a baton from these guys and taking it forward. And hopefully, if you look at the data right now, our female investor population is about somewhere between 9 and 11%. That's blended rate from private equity venture all the way to long only mutual funds. And depending on what vertical you look at, it's especially in venture and private equities, under 2%. So we are still vastly underrepresented. And I think that is a bigger problem because large capital is just not coming down to the tranches. So we're going to solve that. It will take time, but that's my job, to talk to young girls all over the world and tell them that this is a really important job. It may be boring. It may not look, exotic like tech work, but we need them here because we need that worldview to create capital for people and communities that have always been underserved.
Shaitali, thank you so much. And I think if anything, coming to work with you in any capacity would not be at all boring. So I think that's clear. And thank you for that. And Mindy, up to you. As an active member of Golden Seeds, can you share a little bit about your investment process? How do you source deals? What are you looking for? What types of results have you seen? And any advice you have for those on the webinar today and how they can be more aggressive in investing in women? Ooh.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. First, let me say it's an honor to participate in this discussion with both you, Judy, and Shaitali, who, as you can see, is just the rocket moving 100 women forward. And I want to say thanks to the sponsors for putting this together. Such an important conversation, not only today, International Women's Day, but every day, honestly. And so I'm really thrilled that I'm here and that we're having it. So just a bit of background on Golden Seeds. We were founded about 17 years ago with the focus to invest in startups that have gender diversity. So that's to say a woman has to have a C-suite title and a meaningful equity position in the startup and a powerful say in the company. So, so it has to be meaningful and matter. Today, Golden Seeds, 17 years later, is one of the largest angel groups in the country. We have over 300 members in the US, while we have about 8 regional hubs from Boston, New York, New Jersey, Atlanta, across the country in Texas, Arizona, and Silicon Valley. We have members in over 26 states. Our members are about 70% women, 30% men, and that reflects both individuals and growing family office presence. And while we're all generalist investors, we do categorize our investment efforts in 3 sectors: enterprise tech, consumer products, consumer tech, healthcare, and life science. We are geographically agnostic, although we only invest in US companies. Over the last years, we've invested approximately 160 million in over 220 companies. And those companies have gone on to raise about $1.5 billion. Proud to say in 2021, we had 9 exits to large strategics. We had 3 IPOs, and we had 3 companies with large notable up rounds of funding. So an exciting year. Angel investing takes a while, and we had a couple of years of really great results of hard work. As for deal flow, we're one of the largest groups that invest in women companies. So we see a lot of deal flow, but we also work really hard with other angel groups, VCs, strategics for both deal flow and syndication. And we are out there. We're out there in the ecosystem. We see about 1,000 companies a year, and about 500 of those companies go through our screening process around the country. We are always open to conversations with entrepreneurs, whether it's one-on-one or through office hours. We're real believers in taking the call, making, if we're not investing, making entrepreneurs better for the next investor to look at them. And our what we look at is on our website. We'll pop that into the chat room. We have 10 key questions. It's not special sauce. We really look for meaningful conversations. But I would say for me and for most of us, a plan is a plan. Mostly it's about leadership. We all know in our daily lives, whether it's personal or business, that stuff happens. And so we look for people who understand that stuff is happening. And if I wasn't being recorded, I would use the stuff as another word. But stuff happens. And so it's a real leader who can execute through all of that, through the bumps in the road, to build a team, to lead a team, to talk with investors, to execute, and to grow a company. I'm always happy to talk more. I invite all of you to look at our website, whether you're potential investors in angel startups or entrepreneurs, and happy to fill in more of the details at another time.
Thank you, Mindy.
Sure.
With all that all 3 of you are doing, and so many of the people in the audience on this call today, there still are so many barriers to getting more capital in the hands of women that to a large extent we're the choir and we're talking to each other. How do we change the system? How do we jump the fence and get the 95% of capital that's still largely male directed and male owned to women, and not just because women need it and deserve it and will manage it well, but because that's what's going to grow the economy and that's what's going to increase returns for everybody. And what are the solutions? I spoke with a brilliant female entrepreneur, actually from the Philadelphia area a couple of weeks ago, who was deserving of as much capital as possible and was actually getting a really nice oversubscription to a recent round. But she complained that some of the funds that are either led by women or are focusing on women have a higher bar, that they make it actually harder to get capital because the fund managers are trying to prove themselves too. And so they have their own due diligence and their own hurdles to jump in order to be recognized, in order to get the capital themselves. So it's a whole supply chain of capital that's being subjected to bias and this catch-22. So looking forward to some solutions. So Mindy, we'll start back with you. We'll go in the other reverse order. As a leader and a mentor in the industry, what do you see as some solutions to this, and how are we going to jump the fence?
So thanks. That's a great question. And first I want to say it's really important for entrepreneurs to understand the difference between an angel investor, a venture investor, a strategic investor, and say private equity. Right? Each one of us has different thoughts of what we're trying to get to. And I'm not sure, and I get when somebody might present to a venture, because venture is looking for a return of larger growth companies. So when they look at startups, they do have a different bar. Now, it may not be agenda bar. They just have investors on the other side in their venture funds that are looking for a different return. Versus an angel investor who's looking at a startup and hoping to get a 10 times return by either selling to a strategic or getting up rounds. So I think that's a critical part of any entrepreneur looking for their fundraising. And I really, I think that that's really important. Now, I do think that unconscious and conscious bias is a really important thing that we all have to look at, whether you're a woman, diverse woman, a non-white person, a white person. We talk about this as it's a new concept, but it's not. And so it's really important, I think. I know at Golden Seeds, we've spent a lot of time looking at our own unconscious and conscious bias about our own due diligence. And I think that people have to pay attention to what the barriers are to the people, to those funders, right? So I'll give you sort of my vaudeville act. A woman walks into a room of investors. She has a tech company. The guys in the room, nobody looks up. Then they look up and they say, well, she's really smart, but could she run a company? Bada boom. Another woman walks in. She has a healthcare company. Nobody looks up. Then they look up and they say, well, let me go talk to my wife, or my daughter, see if this is an issue. These are true stories. Guy walks in a room. I've been there, seen it. Another guy, investor, one of my friends says, I went to college with that guy, or that guy's a friend of mine. Everybody looks up, due diligence happens, he gets funded. So what's the moral to that story? And by the way, these are true stories, and I've been in the business a long time. Yes, things have changed in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, but it has to be intentional change. Ruth, you talked about all the tools that we have out there, but if we're not using those tools, we're wasting everybody's time. So the only way to make these changes, whether you're an investor, whether you're an investor in startups, whether you're an investor in asset allocation, whether you invest in Morgan Stanley, large cap fund, you have to be intentional, right? You have to add that to your due diligence and not set a different bar for what you're looking for. And again, I want to separate angel from venture because they are different bars, but your process has to have intentionality. You have to allow access. And then finally, you have to execute. I mean, we're 20 years later talking about the same research. So the way to change it is to use the tools you talked about and change the process so that it is intentional for all and that we execute on it. So that's my 2 seconds.
And Mindy, I think you're right. And I know you're right. And it has to come from both the top and the bottom so that the demand, it's supply and demand like anything. And if women-owned businesses and women-run venture funds and women-run public companies are what we all need to have a thriving economy, then there has to be demand from investors and there has to be supply from the top. And so how do we influence the ecosystem? Organic food was not a thing 50 years ago, but people came in and said, oh, I want some of that organic food. And the farmers started making it. And then the convenience stores started saying, I guess I should get some of that. So when the middle managers at the banks and the investment houses recognize that this is the new hot thing, even though it's not new at all, then and they start trying to meet the demand of their customers, all of you as investors, and their big suppliers at Goldman Sachs or wherever start supplying them with the right type of funds, then perhaps we will jump the fence. But it's a lot of work to be done.
So can I ask a question? Because I think Judy, you've been in search. I sit on a variety of boards, and I know now every search that we do, we want to understand what the firms look like, what the leadership is, but then we don't want just one-off, one minority, one diversity in the search. Are you seeing more and more of that?
Well, we're seeing now that, I don't think we do a candidate pool for any search that doesn't have diversity in it anymore. I mean, we invented diversity back in 1974 when we started diversified search, and now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. But, it's just, I don't think I've been part of a search or seen a search, at least in our firm, that, wasn't totally diverse, and there's huge demand for it. And but there were just a couple of things I kind of wanted to say. Mindy, I thought you really made a good point, helpful in explaining to people the difference in the different type of investors and what their expectations are and what they're all looking for. Just a couple of things here. Diversified search. In 2019, I got approached by a private equity firm, and they said, we're interested in talking to you. I said, I've got no interest in you guys. I know exactly what you do. You want to come in and buy us and take control and tell us how to run our business, and then you're going to flip us. I said, you know what? I'm making good money. Everybody's happy here. We're doing just fine. We really don't need you. And they said, no, honestly, we just want to be an investor. And the truth of the matter was that our firm had gotten to a point where we needed capital to grow. And we would try to go acquire other search firms and say, look at what the great personalities we have. We're so terrific and blah, blah. And they said, yeah, but where's the dough? So in order to grow, we did need capital. So bottom line is we met with these guys and they've kept their word. And in 2019, we did 3 acquisitions. COVID came. We just did another one that we just announced last week in cybersecurity. So over $100 million we've gotten from, these folks to do investments. And guess what? They are all women founded firms. And it didn't start out that way. It just happened that way. So, and I don't think they didn't particularly come to us because, it was a woman's thing. And the other point is, you've got to get people's attention. You've got to have a successful business. You got to market yourself. You got to get the message out there so that you become visible to investors. And there's gobs of money, as all of you know, on the sidelines now looking, for places to invest. And women businesses that are successful are, very attractive because of a lot of the statistics that we just talked about. But so I think that I've also started a fund just recently of my own personal money to help women entrepreneurs. And it's in partnership with Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Roseanne Rosenthal is a good friend of mine. She was the CEO and has built that organization into a powerhouse here in Philadelphia. And they very kindly agreed to partner, with me and putting my money into some funds that they're doing, but then on another tranche into Philadelphia-based businesses that have been in business for a couple of years and now need money to go to the next step. Because I remember those days and I remember what that was all about. And I'm doing grants. I'm going to give them the money. And, I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. It's the first time I've ever done anything in my life where I wasn't trying to make money. So this is a very uncomfortable feeling. But I've got a great group of my buddies and women relatives that we're having a blast, and we just are getting ready to announce the first. We put out an announcement with Ben Franklin, and we got like 80, applications, and they have to fill out a ton of information, and it's so exciting. And we just had our meeting, and we picked 7, and we're going to be announcing it, and then we've invested in. Ben Franklin Technology Partners has has a fund of women businesses in technology that we're fully invested in those. So I'm trying to really encourage. There are other women that have made a lot of money. They've made a whole lot more than me, and they're looking to do something like this. By women for women, and so I think that, the more visibility we can get around this kind of thing, the more we can help each other. And, when women, they have got access to huge amounts of money now. And so we just have to, do what we're doing here today and bring each other together. And
Judy, I love what you're saying. And I think that that grant dollars are in some ways a surrogate for the friends and family that male networks have had for generations and thousands of years, that the guy can come in and, I know him, I went to school with him, I've got the money, I can support that business. And women don't always have those networks. And so this concept of women who have the gobs of money, I actually want to know what the definition of a gob is, but we can talk about that some other time, that the gobs of money need to flow, and that we do have to create our own networks and our own pathways that men have frankly taken advantage of and taken for granted for generations. Shaitali, your turn. What can we be doing? What are some of the solutions? How does your organization support women business owners and investors with the due diligence process and assessment?
So for our in-industry work, our association's work is to kind of empower and promote current fund managers and current allocators and current investors. And I'm, on the other hand, playing very long home run game where I want to create so many investors that table that Mindy mentioned had all these guys sitting. I want all that to be women sitting around. And if there is like one or two, if this even exists, I'm sort of a mediocre woman, because I don't think mediocre, it goes together, mediocre and women. But if they are one or two in the whole world, I want them to get funded. So we're playing a long game. We're in every university globally. We're talking to high schoolers, middle schoolers. I want all of these girls to be inspired and create their professional profiles where they go become entrepreneurs, venture investors, allocators, whatever, private equity, fund owners, whatever they desire to start their own companies. But so I'm playing very long game. It's going to take my work maybe 20, 30, 40 years to come to fruition. But meanwhile, while we wait for those strategies to work, we're working with 20-something thousand current allocators, women who are pulling big levers in the industry and asking questions, why aren't our monies going to certain places in certain communities? So we're doing our part as a small but mighty organization. But yeah, so those are the things we're doing.
Wonderful. I want to open it up for questions. I know that some questions had come in advance of the call over the past couple of days, but Sharni, I'm not sure if you want people to take themselves off mute to ask, or to put them, maybe put your question in the chat and we can monitor there. But first question that came in yesterday. If we know that the stats and the separation, if we know these stats in terms of performance, and we know that there's this underfunded history and that we're leaving a lot of talent out of the room and undercapitalized, what are the barriers? We've just been talking about some of the solutions, but what are your perceptions of what the barriers are? And sometimes you need to fully understand, is it bias? Is it convention? Is it education? Is it a supply of female entrepreneurs? You know, what do we all think are the barriers? Maybe I'll come back to you, Mindy, first.
If you could all just bear with us one moment as we try to correct our sound. Ruth, if you could do me a favor and go on mute and then come back on. Your speakers are giving us some feedback. Thank you.
That better?
Mm.
No. Maybe I'll log off and come back.
Or
Well, we'll continue with the program. Mindy, you could take us off from here and then I'll let you back in. Thank you.
bada boom, this is a vaudeville act. Okay. The ship's in my hands. So what are the barriers? Well, we have the education, we have the research. There's a fiduciary responsibility for all of us to diversify in assets that outperform. So I kind of want to throw it back to all the investors in the room. You don't have to respond. But I think one of the barriers is actually getting people to stop reading research or to take the research into yourself, and then to find the outlets of where to invest. You know, every investment committee I sit on right now, we are looking at and demanding, where's the diversity? I said this before, if you're in a Morgan Stanley large cap, where's the diversity to the team? Where's the diversity to the leadership? It's not because we're diverse. We think diversity is important. We do, but we also know it has better results. So I think it's actually having the intentionality of asking the question. I also think it's about commitment. You know, we believe in diversifying our asset allocation. And it's funny, I am seeing a lot of friends here and I'm looking at each of you like, we believe in asset allocation. So we have a fiduciary responsibility to invest in assets that make sense in angel investing, gender diversity, minority diversity, these are the education shows that it's just good business. So I think one of the barriers is just getting people, traditional consultants and other advisors, to move money. This isn't impact investing. This is just good business investing. And go ahead, Judy.
You know, I was just going to say, and Margaret Bradley's on here from Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and she knows this stuff chilly. But I know in what we're doing now in our group, when we're looking to invest, I'm interested in companies that want to grow and that have seen, you know, a little bit of growth, and that have got great ideas for growth, and companies that want to have an impact, you know, not only just in their industry sectors, but the community and the bigger picture too. So I think it's sort of a new set of criteria that really lends itself, I think, to women entrepreneurs. Margaret, you ought to speak up. You know more about this than anybody I know.
So go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, no, on this one, I'm not going to speak up because this hour is a treat, but we're happy to talk with anyone about this all day, any day.
Great. So Shatali, I'm gonna, you know, as a co-founding,
I'm going to see what happens when I start talking again. Is it better?
Perfect.
Okay. All right, good. And Mindy, please continue to you know, one thing that I want to just sort of interject too and see how you all react to it is that this is a wonderful group, so many friends, but there are very few men on this call. And Michael, you do such a great job with organizing this event, but maybe some of the men on the call can help us figure out what are the barriers and what are they hearing, and how can we all be evangelists, particularly the men in the room, and in promoting all of the messages on this call. But also, rather than putting all the men on the spot, unless they want to jump in, I'll also turn to Shatali to see what you'd like to add to this conversation.
This is our life now. I'm always on mute. But to Judy's point, one of the things that I oversee at 100 Women in Finance is our research project. And what we did is we bought all of the data, composite data from Morningstar and composite data from PitchBook. So PitchBook has all of the private company data from venture, private equity, and other alternative assets. And then your Morningstar data is all public company. And then we sent that data off to South Florida University data science department, and they're still chopping the data and analyzing the data. So some of the preliminary results are coming out now. And I sat down with Dr. Rosen just like 2-3 weeks ago. He's showing me, because even he's not a finance person, he's a data science person, but he's fascinated by what he's finding, and his PhDs are finding. With some of the things that they're finding is starting with the private markets, even where women are, wherever they are, they're by their titles and their roles are not directly touching the money. So he's, as an outsider, completely unfamiliar with our industry as a technologist and a data science researcher. He's like, this is interesting. Like, these are people that are managing money, and these are people actually essentially doing all the other supported work. So they never get the claim to fame of taking companies public. So he's observing those things. On the on the comprehensive data on the return side, some of the concrete results in this analysis are, when you add one woman to a team, investment management team, you add 189 basis point, and that's just his preliminary. They're still adding, they're still kind of there's so much data that they have to go through. They just started the project 3 months ago, and just preliminary adding one person, because they still have to go through all the vertical lines of data. And as they're adding more and more and more women to teams, because they are that's how their data sequence is sequenced. And he was like, Chai, the returns are going up as women are more sorted and added to perfectly align with their titles and roles. So there is real money that we community investors, retail investors, our pension plans, our teachers' pension plans, the real money we're leaving on the table by not investing in women. Because of course, when you invest in women allocators and women fund managers, they end up investing in, rest of the food chain, and it gets in the hands of women entrepreneurs. So there's real dollars that we're not delivering to our people that we have a fiduciary responsibility to. And so those are the kinds of things I want to talk about. Hey, you as an investor, if you're Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Goldman Sachs, any of these companies, you have a fiduciary responsibility to deliver optimal returns to your customers, and you're doing them disservice by not investing in women-owned businesses, by not investing in a minority owned businesses. So these are the kinds of questions we as a retail investor should be asking people in our value chain, our supply chain of investments. But that's how, like, that's my next step to kind of start being an ambassador and being an advocate of asking these questions just from a consumer point of view.
I love that. That's great. Another question that had come in, any suggestions for young female startups, how to find funding, community support? I think that we've all touched on that, but if you were speaking directly to somebody with a great idea, a great company, what would you tell them? Maybe we'll start with you, Shaitali.
I've been part of a angel network here in Washington, DC. And for me, what we tell our founders and our entrepreneurs is it's essentially numbers game. Talk to everybody, talk to anyone who listened to you, talk to your friends and families, do role play. And before you get in front of a real investor, have your story, have your value, have your thesis, and like get your story right and practice as much as you can. Because what happens, like Mindy said, substance means a lot less in many of these situations than the style. So we got to get women to do the style part. I know it's a wrong advice because women, we've always been told to do your homework, have perfect qualifications. But in a lot of these setups where you have to pitch, you got to get the style right. And I think we don't teach women enough about style. We constantly preach them over substance. And then they're talking substance when guys are like, I went to college with this guy, right? So getting the style part right is what we, through our angel network here, talk about more. Of course, women are put together. They're going to have their numbers. They're going to have their story right. But I think the style, connecting with people, networking, getting out and meeting as many as people as they can, those are the kinds of things that we talk to our entrepreneurs about.
You haven't talked about government. The SBA has recently come out with new loan programs that are very attractive, for diverse constituencies that want to borrow money. So that, that's another area that you really ought to look at. I think my son's trying to grow his landscaping business. I said, I'm not giving you the money. You go apply to the SBA. They got, money for folks like you. And they do. I mean, I think that's another route that you ought to look into.
Mindy, any advice?
Judy brings up a really good point, and that is understand your financing. So not every company should be pitching to angels. Some of them there are grants. I applaud Judy for the work she's doing. There are loans from the SBA. If you're in healthcare, these are long roads. And so I really think people should look at what it is they're trying to attain at each step of the way, and also learn. Like I said, at Golden Seeds, we have open office hours. We talk about the investment process. It's free. Ben Franklin does it as well. Learn what investors are looking for so you understand how to match what we're trying to accomplish with what you're trying to accomplish. Start a dialogue. Every community has an ImpactPHL or other types of communities. I'm a big believer in communities. It's not about competition. We're here to make each other better. And so if somebody doesn't take your call someone else. Talk to entrepreneurs, understand the hurdles, understand where to go for what types of money. Reach out to, if you're in Philadelphia, it's okay to reach out to resources in New York, in DC. That's work you have to do. And I think there's a growing community and a growing effort to get that done. And, and if you're in financial services, call people at 100 Women in Finance. I don't know. We don't call people anymore. Text them or with an email. I don't know. Something like that.
I was going to say that we support 2 startups at 100 Women in Finance, where they've gotten a number of customers from us. One of them is called Skillfully. Out of a bunch of Berkeley MBAs started this organization. They do mentoring, and this is called tech platform. Another organization is very similar to them, but they do more of matching rather than actual mentoring. Both tech platforms, and just by our endorsements, they came in, and I'm like, I'm happy to give you grant money, like, hey, so I think entrepreneurs shouldn't rule out even grant money. Some people are just, I'm willing to take that money off my books and say, here's your seed money, and in return, you're going to provide X, Y, and Z services to my organization. And I offered that to them. Their investors didn't allow them to take that, but I offered them grant money. But so their grants money. And so in addition to grant money, now every time I see a customer that's suiting for them, I send them a customer. So it's just networking and talking to people. I feel like what I tell entrepreneurs, like I tell everyone in all sorts of walks of life, is more people are willing to help you than not willing to help you. So you got to get to all the people who are willing to help you, and they will help you.
Great advice. I love, we're not going to be able to answer this today because it would take about a whole week, but Monica, your comment, how do we deal with white male ADD in pitch sessions? That'll be our next book. But I want to wrap up, and this has been such a lively and robust and useful conversation. I hope the rest of the audience agrees. And just to get some final thoughts from our three panelists, Mindy, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you again for having this discussion. I think my final thought is I hope this isn't a one-off Women's History Month conversation. And Ruth, you said in the beginning, all these tools are there, how to screen for public equity, for all these different things. So I really challenge all of us to take this as a business and investment opportunity. I mean, we talk about asset allocation, there's money on the table, whether it's startups or investment management teams or vendors. And so I leave everybody with really be intentional, not just of yourself, but of the teams and groups you work with, and help people have access, and also get to the point of executing and putting the money on the table and demanding others do that as well.
Love it. Judy?
Well, I learned something too. Mindy, you are so smart. I've got to spend some time with you. But my message would be that there's no greater life than being a woman entrepreneur. And I've been one for over 40 years, and you can have it all. They used to say to me, you can't have it all. You can't have kids and a happy marriage and successful business career and play golf and have a low handicap. Well, guess what? You can, and I did, and I have, and I'm still going at it. You don't know, this is all gray under here, and there's a bunch of wrinkles here. It just gets better and better and better, and it's the only way to go. And you can make a boatload of money. You're in charge of your life. Men have to be nice to you and respect you because, guess what? Paying a lot of bills and, making life nice. But the most important thing is that you can control your destiny and the impact that you want to have on other people's lives, and the give back, at some point. And many of the women on this panel know that. I mean, it's the greatest, it's the greatest gift you get given to be able to do that. So it's worth whatever you have to go through to keep fighting for that dream to be a woman entrepreneur. There's no better career path than, believe me, I've seen them all, and this is the best.
Tali?
I feel like Forrest Gump my rest of my life, because I'm with Mindy and I'm with Judy on the same panel, and I'm like, what is happening with and the job that I get to do in change making. Just what an incredible honor to be here. And for those of our Philadelphia location who attended this event, thank you so much. I see many familiar faces, Vivian and Emily and others. So thank you so much for attending. If you are a woman investor, and if you want to know what 100 Women in Finance does, please go become our member. It's only $100 a year. And then you'll get invited to all of our fun events and gatherings and discussions and brainstorming. In the meantime, if you wanted to learn more about everything that we do with pre-career audience, whether they're elementary school, middle school, high school, college age girls, if you have any talent problem, you need my oh my God, my super smart, ready to go college graduates. I have 5,000 young women getting ready to go to workforce this year. If you want them, I have their resumes. I know who they are. If you're looking to hire female, young folks, I've got them. Super smart. So let me know if you have any talent needs. We've got women.
Thank you, Chad. And my final comment are, I hope that you'll buy our book, The XX Edge. It's available for pre-sales. All proceeds go to the Women of the World Endowment and the Tara Health Foundation. We won't be making any money off of your purchases, but I do think that we should all buy it. And if you're a woman, please buy 10 to give to all the men in your lives. And if you're a man, I hope you'll read it. And with that, I'll give it back to Michael.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And to just circle back to your question, I thought it was really interesting, Ruth, when you're saying, okay, the men out there, what do you do? What do you think? And the first thing that I thought was, when I'm flipping through and looking at the number of participants, I was shocked how many female participants are on this call. We've never had anything like this. And then I look, and I'm also saddened by that, because the whole thing was, the title of it was why, how, and where to invest in these business opportunities. So you think that there would be a bunch of guys that would jump into the call as well. And it took me back, and when you're saying, well, what can we do? I watched a documentary recently. It was last 2021 documentary called The Conductor, about Marin Alsop. And she was the first female conductor that there's ever been in a symphony anywhere in the world, any of the major houses. And it's about her struggle doing that. And it's about what she's done since she's achieved that post. And it's all about her saying, there's all these men's clubs and they don't ask any questions. You just come in and they just assume that they know. And we have to do the same thing for women. And I think, that would be my answer to your question, is that a lot of the effort, I think, unfortunately, has to come from within. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I also wanted to also go back to Charnay's pointing out the Total Impact Conference, May 16th, 17th. Please sign up for that. We have a session coming up too. Earth Day is on April 22nd, and we do have a program on April 26th at 12 o'clock. We're partnering with the CFA Society with this one, and talking about water, and talking about the environment, and talking about investable opportunities there. And we actually have Margaret Kane of Springpoint Partners is going to bring in some of her portfolio companies to talk about this issue. And I encourage you to sign up for that. We also have Nathan Boone with the William Penn Foundation to talk about what they're doing in this area. So I want to thank our panel today. Thank everyone for such a great program. So thank you. Look forward to seeing you again.